right, and something that I've been meaning to talk about, and if you've been following In The Kliq long enough now, you know we've been pretty much recapping, reviewing all the episodes of The Last Ride. That's the Undertaker's WWE Network special that ran for 5 episodes within the last few months. And then a couple weeks ago, we saw the announcement, Philip, that they were having a bonus episode, I guess a 6th episode, and it's called Undertaker: The Last Ride, Tales from the Deadman. And so this dropped on the WWE Network within the last week or two, if I remember correctly. I watched it. I know you watched it, and it's a really easy viewing. It's only about 25 minutes long, if that. So I figured, why not talk about it? So since we talked about the other episodes. So I think what we'll do is we'll kind of maybe give our initial thoughts on it, and then we'll kind of break down some of the stories from this episode. So what was your initial reaction to watching this bonus episode?
I loved it, and I just want to get this out there. Every time Taker does something from now on, it needs to end with Troubadour by George Strait. It just needs to end with that. It's such a great song.
Yeah.
I was looking forward to this because, we've said it, anybody that's been covering this series, Taker's been keeping kayfabe for 30 years, and for him to, finally open up about some of these stories it's great, man. The stuff with Yokozuna, the stuff with him and Godfather and fighting over a hat because they had too much whiskey, and just stuff like that, man. That's fun to hear, these stories from back in the day, and some of them may even be folklore and all that other stuff. And if you listen to a lot of the interviews, he's talked about the Montreal screw job and what he saw that night, and it's great that Taker's opened up, man. I love it.
Yeah, that's the thing. I agree with you on that. Is first off, yeah, Undertaker for 30 years has been living the Undertaker gimmick, or excuse me, Mark Calloway has been living the Undertaker gimmick seriously nonstop for, like I said, nearly 30 years. And so finally he's at a point in his life where he can just be Mark when he goes out in public. He can just be himself and do these interviews as himself and not have to be, quote, in gimmick mode or character mode as the Undertaker. And with that being said, now that I think that the gates are coming down on him, those walls are coming down, and he's kind of becoming I don't want to say vulnerable, but he's opening himself up now to the public and just opening up and talking about his career in WWE. And with that being said, we're now able to start getting all these great stories that for the longest time were just kept private amongst him and his peers. So I thought the concept for this episode was great. It was just, it looks like it's a mixture of, I think deleted scenes or just extra material that they probably couldn't get into the normal episode, the regular series of The Last Ride. And it's just him telling all these various stories, quick little stories. And as he's talking, he's just sitting in the chair, he's telling these stories, and you have these different animations or cartoons or drawings animating the story being played out. So it's cool. You hear him talking, narrating, and then you have these various animations showing up on the screen, acting out the scene. So, and it was a lot of fun. It was, it starts out kind of like the origin story. And he's talked about this on Stone Cold Steve Austin's podcast, where when he got hired by WWE, he thought he was going to become the Eggman, that big egg that was at that Survivor Series back in 1990. He thought he was going to become the Eggman inside the egg that pops out, and that's his new character. And he's like, crap. He thought his career was going to go nowhere, but turned out it was just a lot of anxiety for nothing, and he became the Undertaker instead. So it was just cool, the drawings of that and him as the Eggman in the ring, just that animation. That was really cool. Was there any other stories in particular that really stood out for you on this episode?
No, not really. I mean, a lot of the ones that stand out there are separate from this, or the stuff he's been doing on his little media tour promoting the Last Ride series. Obviously, he talked about out drinking Cypress Hill on the Steve Austin Broken Skull sessions. He's told the story on State of Combat with Brian Campbell about how Vince had this 4 or 5 month long rib on him. So, he has a special jacket made for WrestleMania, and, it fits perfectly fine because, he wears MMA gloves, so it's hard for stuff to come off. Fits perfectly fine. The Raw after, he's with Kane, and he's trying to take the jacket off, and he can't really get it off, so a ring crew guy helps him out. And then a couple months later, Vince is like, "Oh, it's Shawn Michaels Appreciation Night. You want to come by?" Taker's like, "Yeah." He's like, "We got to keep it a surprise." So Taker's hiding on this bus for like 3 hours, and Michael Hayes comes out and is like, "Hey man, Vince wants to practice your entrance." And Taker's like, "What are you talking about? It's supposed to be a surprise." And Michael Hayes is like, "Oh no, Vince really wants you to come out there." So he he goes out there. They do all this music, and then he's out there with the ring crew, and everybody's watching. And on the screen, it's like the streak, and it's just like one of the normal previews that they do, promos. And it's like, but Taker's greatest rival taking off this jacket. It was just like this long rib, and everybody around the ring is laughing at this like 6'9" guy chasing around this billionaire around the ring and through the stands. Like it's just hilarious, dude. That was like a couple years ago.
Okay, that's really cool. And well, for me also with this episode, I enjoyed like early on when the Undertaker was still fairly new and him and Paul Bearer are traveling together. It's great hearing him and his experience coming to Madison Square Garden. And back then, before social media, the internet was a big thing, and how it was actually a little bit easier, obviously, to keep kayfabe alive and stay in character 24/7. And with that being said, it was just really cool that Madison Square Garden, I guess, going in and out of there was tough. It just all the fans would see them coming in and out. So it was kind of cool to hear like they would park down the road at some hotel underground garage, and then an ambulance would come pick them up. They would jump in and then take the ambulance inside to Madison Square Garden. So that was awesome. And they did that for a couple years. And unfortunately, someone found out, told everyone. And I guess one night they were coming back and there was like 1,000 people outside this parking garage. And they were like, crap, they know our routine now. So they couldn't do that anymore. So it's just kind of cool to hear kind of the extreme lengths that Undertaker would go through to not be seen in public all the time, and just to keep the whole mystique going as the Undertaker. And like, I always really enjoy hearing the stories about his old crew. Was it the Bone Street Crew?
Oh,
is that the
BSK.
Name? BSK, which a lot of people say was kind of like, I don't know, say like a rival, but it was another locker room group of friends, very similar to how the Kliq was back then. So this is Undertaker's crew guys they hung out with. So it's like Yokozuna, I think one of the Godwins, the Godfather, and a few other guys. And with that being said, the Godfather, him and Taker, they like came up in the business together. Even back in the late 80s, they rode together and they worked promotions together. And so they've been friends for a very long time. And so it's really cool to hear that story, how, they were drinking whiskey in a hotel room and a bunch of the wrestlers were in the room partying. And Godfather had that really nice hat on, and Taker was like complimenting him. And Godfather was like, "Here, you wear it." And he puts it on, and then he says, "Go ahead, keep it." And Taker's like, "No." And then they're drunk and they start arguing. "No, you keep it. No, you keep it." And finally, Taker goes into the bathroom and Godfather comes in and Taker breaks his head through the door. Godfather like gets down like he's like on a football field and like tackles him, and they're just wrestling. Imagine these two huge guys wrestling each other just over a stupid hat. And eventually Undertaker's like, "Yes, I'll take the hat." And Godfather's like, "See, I won that fight." So it's just cool seeing their friendship play out like that, and them explaining just all the fun adventures they had together. And there was a bunch of them. I think the other one too is when I said earlier about kayfabe, and they're doing their best to hide when they're in public. So imagine seeing the Undertaker in person on the streets. It must be kind of a scary thing. So the story that him and Bruce Pritchard were traveling, I think it was to Tennessee or something. They were lost, and it was late at night after a show, and they were kind of a sketchy part of town. Went to a gas station asking for directions, and some guy was coming up and was like, "Yeah, I can help you directions, but it costs you money." And Bruce Pritchard trying to be nice, and Taker's like leaning back in his seat, and if he leans up, and the guy's like freaked out. He's like, "Oh my God, is that guy dead, or did he just kill someone? He looks like he killed someone." So I think it's funny. The Undertaker is like, looks like he's still in his get up after a wrestling show. So imagine seeing that out in the street. You would probably freak out too, seeing this huge dead man walking around, or at least in the car. So it's stories like that was very funny. And I really thought it was cool. Just a mixture of each story had a different type of animation. So it really popped, I think, as they were going from story to story. I thought that was cool. The plane ride from hell. We've heard so much about that. The only thing with that one, I think we've heard various stories of when it went on. Like, was it Ric Flair dancing around naked? And we've heard, was it Kurt Hennig and was it Brock? Weren't they wrestling each other or something? We've heard various stories. Undertaker's story was very short, and it just focused on him. He didn't really get into what happened on the rest of that plane. I think you could do like a full hour episode, probably breaking down all the different little things going on throughout that plane ride. But he just focused on him like sleeping, trying to sleep with his busted ear. Wakes up, he sees Vince McMahon, Kurt Angle going at it, and he grabs Kurt Angle. But that's all he focused on. He didn't get into all the other stuff. So hopefully maybe we get like a part 2 of Undertaker explaining what happened from his perspective. But then again, he was sleeping, so maybe he didn't see all that stuff. It's all legend to him. But nonetheless, I enjoyed this. I think they can make this an ongoing series. I think I'll be all for that. I think it was great. And like I said before, he's been so committed to that character for so long. The fact now, at this point in his life, he's just being Mark and just opening up and telling all these stories. I love it. And I'm glad he's doing it now because it seems like he has a very sharp mind. He remembers a lot of things. And now he can just, while his memory's still intact, in great shape, might as well start documenting all this. And that way we can all live vicariously or just enjoy all these stories while he's able to tell them all. So I think it's great. Hopefully maybe one day he'll do a book as well, where at least more of these stories in animation forms. Like I said, it could be like an ongoing series for the WWE Network. I'm all for it. So I want more Undertaker stories, and more of these animations. So good stuff right there.